On today's episode, we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about mortgage defaults, the foreclosure wave, and tariffs, and all sorts of things. So let's get right into it. My podcast was designed to help new and seasoned investors and entrepreneurs break free from the financial confusion by sharing real world investing and business strategies they can use to build lasting wealth and freedom. The first thing I like to start with something kind of fun or funny in this case. I pulled this from the private mortgage financing um, website. And this is a list of the top 10 excuses of people who didn't make their mortgage payment. So if you want to hear something funny, here we go. So these are real life excuses given for not making a mortgage payment. Number 10, I thought my ex wife made the payment. Number 9, I already made 12 payments last year. Number 8, I'm thinking of selling the property. And you would be shocked how many times we actually hear that one in our lending company. I'm selling the property, so I didn't think I had to make a payment since it's up for sale. Number 7, my dog needed his teeth cleaned. Therefore, I could not make my mortgage payment. Number 6, my tenant stopped paying the rent. Now, that one is very legitimate. We hear that one sometimes. Number 5, I was out of town and didn't have access to my finances. Number 4, the bank froze my funds because I'm a vegetarian. That's probably the oddest in the list of top 10. Number 3, I love this one. I had to read it twice. I kind of sold the property, and the guy who kind of bought it was kind of supposed to pay the mortgage. Um, yeah, kind of sold the property, and he was kind of supposed to pay the mortgage. Number 2, the electric bill came in kind of sudden last month. And number 1, I had to rebalance my checking account before I could consider paying any bills. So there we go with the top 10 reasons people do not pay their mortgage payment. So I thought that was a good little intro into what I wanted to talk about first today, which is the U.S. foreclosure rate. So, a gentleman that I know fairly well in the real estate industry posted on his social media account the other day that the foreclosure wave is coming. And I thought, wow, I need to look into this. I did not realize there was a foreclosure wave coming. So I deep dived into it, and currently, nationwide, and again, you know my feelings on nationwide numbers. We'll dig in a little deeper in a minute. But nationwide, as an aggregate in the United States, there one home out of every 1,515 homes had a foreclosure filing on it, Q1 2025. That represented 93,953 properties, which is up 11% from the previous quarter. However, it's down 2% year over year when looking at Q1 2025 against Q1 2024. So, this does not tell me there is a a foreclosure wave coming. I'm going to vehemently disagree with that characterization. 1 out of 1,515 homes is under a foreclosure filing. The other thing that we are seeing is when there is a foreclosure filing against homes today, particularly owner occupied homes, there is typically enough equity in the home for the owner of that home to sell it prior to it being foreclosed on. And in that instance, most of these folks are able to walk away with money as opposed to the 2008, 2009 crisis, where we did see a massive wave of foreclosures. And the biggest difference was during that time, most of the homes that were foreclosing, there was no equity in them. Okay, these people were getting 80-20 loans back then, and I know some of you listening to this don't even know what an 80-20 loan is because it hasn't existed since 2009 or 2010 at the latest. But back then, you could get an 80-20 loan, meaning if the house that you wanted to buy for your family to live in cost $200,000, you would go out and get a loan for 80% of that at one interest rate, and then you would get a second mortgage for the other 20% at a little higher interest rate. And those mortgages were sold separately on the secondary market. Well, you can't get 80-20 loans anymore. You haven't been able to get 80-20 loans in at least 15 years. Hard to believe that it's been 15 years since that happened. Um, So today, the homeowner is sitting in a much better equity position. They had to put a little bit of something down to get the loan. We eliminated in 2009, 2010, in that same time frame, the ninja loan, which meant no job, no income. I probably said that backwards. No income, no job loan. Um, Back then, in 2005, 6, and early 7, if you could fog a mirror with your breath, you were qualified for a mortgage. And these were not mortgages for investment, these were mortgages for families to live in, homes that people were going to live in. We have not been writing those loans in this country for 15 years, 16 years. So I completely disagree with the analysis that we're going to see a foreclosure wave. Um, if people do lose their homes, they are not going to lose it to foreclosure because they're going to be able to just put it on the market. They're going to be able to call a realtor and list this thing and sell it given enough time. And if they don't have enough time, they're going to be able to call a real estate investor to get a quick cash offer and still most likely walk away with some equity. Um, the other thing that has helped these folks is over the last, 15 years, values have done nothing but go up and go up substantially in multiple years running. So again, that has just added and built that equity that most homeowners have in their homes today. And the other thing that I think we need to look at is the amount of homes today that have low interest rate mortgages. The last time I looked, over 80% of mortgages had a rate of under 5%. Under 5%. Now, that's the reason we don't see a lot of people moving, um, but we're still seeing moves. We're just not seeing it in the numbers we would if mortgage rates were the same as what they had been when the bulk of people that got mortgages today got them. So, my analysis is no. I disagree with my colleague that we are not going to see a mortgage foreclosure wave. However, y'all know that there is no such thing as national numbers. So, as you dig in a little deeper, you can see that California, Florida, and Texas do have slightly higher rates of foreclosure filings than other states, but it's still not to any level that we could consider a wave. So I get asked that all the time. When are we going to see it? When are we going to see it? I don't think we can say with any certainty that we're going to have a foreclosure wave anytime on the horizon, simply because of that. If there is a foreclosure wave that's on the horizon, I would argue that it's going to be in commercial assets rather than residential assets. Um, Next article that I wanted to talk about, this one is really interesting to me and probably most of you that are in real estate. The headline here: small real estate investors reach record market share and now dominate investor purchases. So, back in 2000, 9, 10, 11, we saw a flood of private equity coming into the single family housing market and buying up a lot of rentals. And in fact, in several major markets across the country, they were so prevalent that real estate wholesalers were just selling exclusively to the PE funds. There were major hitters coming into Houston, Phoenix, uh, other markets that I don't remember at this time. And I know a lot of my friends that were wholesalers at the time. They were just out literally buying for some of these funds. And it was a heyday for them because these funds were paying 90% of value minus repairs, 95% of value minus repairs at some points, which was certainly not a formula that us small investors were using. We were using more the 70%, 75 if we're going to hold it as a rental, but we certainly were getting nowhere near 90 and 95. We couldn't possibly do that. Well, here the table has turned, and I'll read from the article here. Small real estate investors increased their foothold in the market last year, according to a new report from Realtor.com. It found that small investors made up 59% of all the investor home purchases in 2024. This is the highest share in the data's history of over 20 years of looking at that. Um, Now, they are qualifying small investors as entities that have bought 10 or fewer homes in that entity's lifetime. So the number of homes acquired by small investors rose 3.7% year over year to hit 361,900 units in 2024. So the table has turned. Now, meanwhile, the share of investor homes acquired by large investors reached the lowest level in 17 years. Entities that have bought at least 50 homes or more were only responsible for 21.7% of all investor purchases last year. They bought 132,500 homes. On the whole, real estate investors, small, medium, and large, made up 13% of the home purchases last year. Now, that is down just a little bit from the all time high of 2022, in which real estate investor purchases were 13.3% of all homes sold in the US. The real estate marketplace attributed to a decreased level in total home sales, and that signaled a significant presence of investors in these markets. So, that was interesting to me, that the small real estate investor, defined as 10 units or less, are dominating the investor market right now and purchasing way more than the larger players. And we've seen that play out over the last couple of years as the larger players have started exiting. As mentioned earlier, home prices have skyrocketed, and a lot of these larger funds, they're saying, hey, now's the time for us to exit. Let's take our chips off that table. Let's go ahead and lock in those equity gains and cash out and move into other assets. So that tracks absolutely with everything else that we're seeing. Couple of other reports on wealth creation in this country. I'm just kind of, I just picked and chose some articles that I've seen in the last week that really caught my eye. The United States created an eye popping number of new millionaires in 2024. This report finds that the U.S. claims nearly 40% of all the millionaires in the world. That's fascinating. 40% of all the world's millionaires live in the United States. Now, UBS is the one that did this study, and it says in its global wealth report that it found America gained more than 379,000 new millionaires in 2024. 379,000 new millionaires in 2024. That was the biggest increase in new millionaires in absolute growth terms out of the dozens of markets that UBS looked at around the world last year. And the equivalent of over 1,000 new people reached millionaire status each day. Interesting. Very fascinating. I'll dig into it a little bit more here because all I see on the news is how people are getting poorer and poorer. They're not getting wealthier and wealthier. And I always look for positives in the news, although it's sometimes hard to find and you have to look real close for it. The total number of millionaires in the United States last year climbed 1.5%, hitting a new record of 23.8 million people who claim millionaire status. Now, I get it. With inflation, the term millionaire does not mean the same thing that it meant in 1950, let's say, or even 1980, or even 2000. I get it. But it is still a benchmark that shows a climb in the number of people that are reaching that status. Whether that status means the same thing or not is irrelevant to me in this report, because what we're seeing is more and more people are reaching that status as a percentage of the population. And that's phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal. Behind the United States, this was interesting. Mainland China, France, Japan, and Germany had the highest number of millionaires in 2024, roughly 6.3 million, 2.9 million, 2.7 million, and 2.6 million, respectively. Now, let's go back to those numbers because in the United States, we have 23.8 million millionaires in 2024. And the next closest is mainland China at 6.3 million millionaires. Wow. That's wild. That's phenomenal for the United States. Overall, the world gained 684,000 new millionaires. That's a jump of 1.2% from the year before. And global wealth was also on the rise, climbing 4.6%. So while we keep hearing over and over that the poor are getting poorer, only the wealthy are getting wealthier, this report clearly shows us that that is not exactly true. That is not exactly true at all. Regionally, the Americas boasted the highest average wealth per adult. So the Americas boasted a wealth per adult of $311,000. The region covering Europe and the Mideast and Africa averaged half that at 167,000 per adult, while the Asian Pacific region came in at only 66,000 per adult. And I think that's something that if you don't travel, you wouldn't understand this. But if you have the means and the ability to travel outside of the United States, I strongly encourage you to do that. And even stronger encourage you to expose your children to things outside of the United States. It's really hard for somebody that grew up in the United States. Their parents grew up in the United States, their grandparents grew up here, and for 3 generations have never seen anything but the United States, to understand how good we have it in the United States. But when you travel outside our country and you see how people live in other regions and in other places, it, I believe, at least for me and my family, has certainly given us a whole new perspective on things. Um, I guess the only other thing that I would take from this article is the last line that says that it believes, UBS that is, believes that North America and Greater China will be the main drivers of global wealth in the coming 5 years. So they're seeing this as a trend that they believe is going to continue. And I would concur. Not that I know as much as they do or have the data that they have, but just reading as much as I do and studying as much as I do and talking to as many people in business and finance and real estate as I do, I can tell you right now is a very good time. Right now is a very good time for investors. And we are seeing that across the board. So there are a lot of good things happening. And I think they are only going to get better. Now, on the subject of wealth and the United States, this was another fascinating little tidbit that I know I'm bouncing around today, but just a lot of little nuggets that when you string them all together, it kind of gives you an understanding of where you might think things are headed. And that's honestly what I do is I just read enough and talk to enough people that I string these little nuggets together and say, am I seeing a trend? And and in what direction is that trend headed? Is this all good news? Is this all bad news? Is it more good than bad? And so forth. And right now, everything that I'm reading is leading me to believe that in the next 12 to 18 months, things are going to be very exciting for real estate and for investments in general. Right now, over the last 12 months or so, there has just been this fear. And I talked about it in an earlier episode where I said the word of the day, if there was one, is fear. But today, I would not use that same term. I would say the word of the day today is caution, which is much different than fear. Now, it's still not optimism, it's still not euphoria, but it's not fear. And I think there is a sense among most of the people that I'm talking to that late 2025 or early 2026, things are going to go crazy good. Things are going to get wild in a good way. And that is my take from everything that I'm reading. So, the next article here, talking more about millionaires. The United States is expected to gain 7,500 new millionaires in 2025 from foreign countries. Now, the last article was on how many new millionaires, these are US millionaires, were created in 2024. I think this trend is going to continue in 2025, where more people in the United States are going to reach millionaire status, and it's going to be an eye popping number, just like it was in 2024, because the, the environment is right for it. But in addition to that, we are also expected to gain 7,500 new millionaires from other countries, and those millionaires are expected to bring 43.7 billion with a B dollars in wealth with them. Now, this is fascinating, guys, and these little stories matter. These little stories give us a glimpse into what is happening now and what is going to happen in the future. So, the United States is expected to see a net influx of around 7,500 foreign millionaires coming to the U.S., bringing $43.7 billion with it. For reference, around 142,000 millionaires around the globe are projected to migrate to a new country in 2025. That's fascinating. 142,000 millionaires are going to change the country of residency. Now, the countries gaining the biggest number of those millionaires are the UAE, number one, the United States, number two, Italy, number three, Switzerland, number four, and Saudi Arabia, number five. This was a study done by investment consulting firm Henley and Partners. Anybody that's interested in digging into it deeper than I'm going to go, I think they rightfully point out in the next paragraph the benefits to millionaire migration include that they contribute foreign revenue. Obviously, they're bringing their money with them, they're bringing their wealth with them. They frequently start new businesses, they boost the local stock market and the middle class, indirectly create new jobs via their spending power, and can have a multiplier effect on wealth growth in the region they move to. Now, the UAE topped the list with a net inflow of around 9,800 millionaires and 63 billion in wealth, but we rank number two, and I'll take it for 43 billion. That's pretty darn good. From 2014 to 2024, the United States has seen an increase of 78% in millionaire migration. Let's just think about that for a second. I have been told by the media, and you have too, that the United States is not what it used to be, and that it is the redheaded stepchild of the world, and it is not a good place. People don't want to come here anymore. We're not respected in the world. I've been told all those things in the media, and you have too, but yet we're number two in the world for people to move to that have the means and the money to move anywhere in the world they want to move. So I call bullshit on that. We are not the redheaded stepchild. We are not in decline. And people that have the means to move and vote with their feet are coming to the United States. Now, I wish we were number one. We're Americans. We want to be number one at everything. But number two, I'll take. Um, this is fascinating to me. So here we are being told one thing, but yet the data shows a complete other. And that is so common. It is so common. And I'm going to talk about tariffs in a coming episode. I've got a big episode I'm going to be talking about the Federal Reserve and interest rates and where I think that's going to be headed. And the data and the information that I'm reading there shows everything we are being told in the media and told by economists is wrong. Everything we are being fed is just absolutely the exact opposite of what the data shows. So, very interesting here. Now, the worst countries for millionaires to move to, in other words, they are expecting an outflow, is the UK. And they are going to lose 16,500. That is over twice what the United States is going to gain. The UK is losing, and in a much smaller country. The next worst is China. Number two, China is expected to lose more than we gain. They're going to lose 7,800 millionaires with an estimated wealth of $55.9 billion. In fact, China has seen a 74% increase in millionaires, but they're losing them as fast as they're creating them. Now, I thought, wait a minute, hold on. We've been told China's going to overtake the United States. It's going to be the next best world economy. Well, according to this, the millionaires that live in China don't think that because they're exiting in the second highest numbers of any country in the world. Third ranking is India with a net outflow of 3,500. Fourth is South Korea with 2,400 people leaving that are millionaires. And ranked fifth, and no surprise, is Russia, expected to lose 1,500 millionaires in this year. So here we are. We're just creating millionaires left and right, and we are gaining them from around the world from other countries that these folks are leaving. So, in keeping with the entrepreneurial spirit and creating wealth, becoming millionaires, my last article of the day, Gen Z starting to wake up to trade school programs. and this is something I've been railing on for years. I grew up in the 80s. I graduated high school in 83, and my generation was told you should go to college. You really should go to college. I didn't do that, but that's what I was told. Um, but my generation, the we told our kids, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm the oldest Gen Xer, turning 60 this year, and we told our kids, you need to go to college. We were told we should go to college, but my generation told the millennial generation, you need to go to college. And that became a mantra that for the last 30 years, if you didn't go to college, you weren't going to amount to anything. And so over the last 30 years, we have pumped out a heck of a lot of college graduates um, with worthless degrees. We've pumped out a lot of college graduates who have never ever used their degrees. And I think there is now a sense in my generation and in my children's generation, the millennial generation, that they're not going to push that same thing on their kids. And we're seeing that in this article. This was an article that was mainly written by a technical, where it was written on a technical institute that had increased enrollment 35% since 2020. So in the last 5 years, they have seen a 35% enrollment. So this is not a big data point, but it is a trend that I'm starting to see. And we're starting to see some larger data points in the article here. So uh, what they're trying to do is fill what they're calling the skill trade gap, the skilled trade gap. There is a huge need it's what they're calling a dire need in the United States for skilled trades. Far too long, it says the public education system basically characterized the trades as a downward move from high school. If you went into the trades after high school, or you went into trade education after high school, or during high school, in my case, I went to a trade school my junior and senior year of high school, learned auto body and painting, which I never used. But guess what? I didn't waste any years of my wage earning life doing it either. I used the second 2 years of high school to do it. After that, um, I went into an adult program and took masonry. It was an adult education program, about a 10-week program. I went 2 or 3 nights a week. I don't remember. I was probably 18 or 19 years old at the time. I also went to auctioneering college, which was a 3-week program. Uh, Now, I did use that one. I didn't use the auto body and painting. Other than for my own purposes on my own vehicles. And I didn't ever use the masonry training that I received, but I learned something. I learned a trade. I learned something that if I needed to do it, I could have done it. Um, and then my third trade school was auctioneering, and I did use that. I used that for 8 years. On a part-time basis. I didn't do it full time, but I used it and actually still use it to this day for charity auctions when the situation arises and the opportunity avails itself. So I am a huge proponent of trade schools because I'm a product of multiple trade schools. So the article goes on and says basically the grand prize has been said to be a trip to college. And that has been made the goal by the public education system. Now, according to the National Clearinghouse Research Center that focuses on higher education, that enrollment in several kinds of trade programs is increasing, including in mechanical, repair technology, as well as construction. The study released in the spring reported further that enrollment in trade schools grew by 19%, and that enrollment in public 2 year focused trade schools has increased by 12%. That's good news. That is fantastic news. Goes on to say Gen Z is waking up to see the value of trade schools as enrollment is increasing after several decades of young people overlooking the practice and That's why they feel that Gen Z is really starting to wake up to the trades. Now, this was an interesting twist to Huff, this CEO of this big trade school that was interviewed for this article, says President Trump's recently signed Big Beautiful Bill has also bolstered trade schools. Under the bill, and I did not know this, students can use Pell Grant money now to pay for short term workforce training programs offered by some accredited trade schools. Much as I read through this, it was much like the masonry class that I took back many, many, many years ago or decades ago. He says these grants will help people who already have experience or are already using their trade skills, and it will allow for that individual to take a shorter, high quality program to enhance their skills and stack their credentials. Furthermore, it benefits people who don't have time to take the standard length 2-year programs. So that was in the big, beautiful bill. And I'm going to be doing a dissection of that big, beautiful bill in a later episode here in the next couple of weeks that will deep dive into a lot of the tax law changes and how that's going to affect investment and how that's going to affect real estate, because there are a lot of changes in there. And this is law now. It has passed, it has been signed, and it has been implemented. There are a ton of things in that bill to talk about as it relates to investment. But this is one of them as it pertains to education that I was unaware of. Next line, while enrollment trends show promising signs for trade jobs, there is still a huge demand for workers to fill vacancies as current tradesmen are retiring soon. There are 320,500 new welders needed by 2029 to meet the demand that year, according to the American Welding Society report. 320,500 new welders needed in the next 4 years. Other trade industries like plumbing, construction, truck driving, and HVAC technologies face similar circumstances. Now, I've been talking for a long time about other trades that relate more specifically to real estate and investing. And obviously, HVAC and welders, electricians, uh, sheetrockers, those types of folks and construction trades relate to real estate. But here's one that hits us all: appraisers. And it's a category that people don't think of when they think of the trades, right? We don't really put appraisers in that category. But I did a real quick dive on appraisers. The average age of an appraiser in the United States today is right at 60 years old, 60 years old, meaning they are my age, okay? And they're fixing to retire shortly, okay? Most of these folks are over 50 years old. In fact, 80% are over 50 years old, according to the National Association of Realtors. So when we talk about trade schools, we're not just talking about construction trades and truck drivers. We could also be talking about appraisers as a trade, because that is a trade that can be learned fairly quickly in some states, without a 4-year degree. And it is a trade that people could go into without having to go through the process of what quote unquote formal education, and a good paying trade at that. Now, the problem in a lot of states is that particular trade, the appraisers, have trade associations in every state, and they have placed, through their lobbying, massive barriers to entry for new people to become appraisers. And I have a family member that looked into going into appraisal, and in Texas, they had to have an enormous amount of college education before they could even be accepted into appraisal trade association training. This is something that we need to really speak out about at the state level, because it's going to go one of two ways. Either there's just going to be a massive shortage of appraisers, which is going to create a massive backlog and a massive price increase in getting appraisals, or the industry is going to adopt a new system of third-party verification of value, which is what an appraisal is. It's a third-party verification of value. And if we don't fix the appraiser situation and get more new people into the appraisal field, we are going to have to find a new methodology for valuing property and eliminate appraisers from the equation entirely. So my message to the appraisal associations around the country is get with the program and loosen your guidelines so that new young people can get into your field or risk extinction of your field, because that's really where we're at. When you look at the average appraiser being 60 years old and 80% of all appraisers being over 50, that is an unsustainable number, and it has been that way for the last 5, 6, 7 years. So that's where we are with trade schools. Gen Z is waking up. They are enrolling in trade schools more and more than they were before, and less in four-year colleges. And we need a ton of people to do so, because we are short hundreds of thousands of welders, truck drivers, HVAC professionals, and appraisers. That is what I've got for you today on this episode. It was a hodgepodge of different things to talk about, but basically, good news, good news, good news, and good news, the way I see it. We don't see a foreclosure wave coming in single-family housing. We see a massive amount of new millionaires made in this country just last year, another massive amount of new millionaires moving to this country this year, and those waves are both expected to continue. And trade school is on the rise, not on the fall. So that's the way we see it as of today. And I will see you next week with another episode where we're going to dive into tariffs and why we are not seeing the doom and gloom that was predicted by the media, by economists, and by everybody else that was on TV and radio raving that these tariffs are going to be horrible. And I've done a massive deep dive on that. That's going to be covered on the next episode. Until then, we'll see you on the next episode, and we'll see you at the top. Thanks for joining us on The Invested Mindset. To continue receiving these actionable wealth-building strategies, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Turn on the auto-download to ensure you never miss an episode. And if these insights moved you closer to financial freedom, take a moment to leave us a review. It helps fellow entrepreneurs and investors discover these valuable strategies. I'm Tom Berry, and I'll see you next time as we continue building the path to lasting wealth and freedom.